Welcome to Nightline. I'm Nakia Basharudin. The headlines. PM hits out at Dongzong for opposing government's efforts to foster unity. And Hong Kong airport grinds to a halt as protests swell. We'll begin with our headlining story. The Prime Minister on Monday took to task Chinese education group Dongzong, which, according to Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, have always been opposing the government's efforts to foster unity. He also questioned the motive of the organization's recent protests over khat in schools, despite the decision to implement the learning of Jawi since 2012 by the previous government.
Kita dah buat keputusan dah. Kalau tak mau ambil tu sah. Dongzong ini resis. Kita buat sekolah satu kampus. Sekolah wawasan. Nak letak sekolah Cina, sekolah Tamil, sekolah kebangsaan di dalam satu kampus. Dia tak mau, takut anak-anak dia kunun bercampur dengan orang Melayu. Jadi dia tak suka orang Melayu. Semua dia bantah, tak pernah dia setuju dengan apa-apa.
Tun Dr. Mahathir spoke to the media after attending an Ideal Adha gathering in Langkawi, Kedah on Monday. The Chinese educationist group recently launched a petition against the teaching of khat to Year 4 pupils, despite the Education Ministry's decision to making the lesson optional and halving the number of lessons. At the same media conference, the Prime Minister was asked to comment on DAP MP's statement on Monday, calling for a review in the decision-making process at the Pakatan Harapan Presidential Council. Klang MP Charles Santiago said Tun Dr. Mahathir had been making unilateral decisions for the people at a troubling frequency. Santiago also said that Tun Dr. Mahathir by now should be able to read the mood of the people, and that included on the khat issue.
Masa depan apabila saya nak buat keputusan, saya tanya boleh atau tidak, Santiago bersetuju. Kalau dia tak bersetuju, saya tak buat.
Maknanya nak dapatkan pandangan dia lah.
Oh, bisa dapat pandangan dia. Dia setaraf dengan saya.
Meanwhile, the DAP said there is a need to review the implementation of khat in the Year 4 Bahasa Melayu syllabus. For this, the party said it will once again propose to the cabinet at this Wednesday's meeting to look into the matter. This as minority protests over the new policy continues. Its Secretary-General Lim Guan Eng, in a statement on Monday, said at last week's cabinet meeting it was agreed that the introduction of khat was not compulsory and that the topic will be reduced from 6 to 3 pages in the textbook. He said the cabinet also decided that there will be no examination. Lim, who is also the finance minister, pointed out that DAP ministers had voiced in the cabinet meeting last week the strong sentiments of the non-Malay community that were unhappy with the education ministry for proceeding with the implementation when it was done without prior consultation with stakeholders of Chinese and Tamil primary schools. Following this latest development and further consultations and feedback from the public, Lim said he will raise up the matter again in cabinet this week. He also said that he noted that the initiative was not linked to reports of a fellow minister's purported remarks that many in the cabinet disagreed with the introduction of khat in Chinese and Tamil schools. The government's targeted fuel subsidy meant for the lower-income B40 group is in the fine-tuning process. Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Minister Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail said, although according to the timeline, it should have been announced in the first quarter of this year, but the government needed more time as the process involved much cross-checking of data.
Di fasa akhir ni akan melibatkan proses fine tuning, terutama bukan soal mekanik atau prosesnya itu dah selesai, bukan juga soal peruntukan atau bajet, itu dalam lingkungan keupayaan kita. Dia ada beberapa proses lain lagi yang saya fikir akan dapat kita uruskan dalam sikit masa lagi.
He said this to the media after attending an Idul Adha event in Bayan Baru, Pulau Pinang on Monday. Datuk Sri Saifuddin said that once those truly eligible have been identified, references will be made to the Bantuan Sara Hidup Initiative, Road Transport Department, National Registration Department, Inland Revenue Board and Bank Negara. He said once the final stage is completed, the paper would be tabled to the Cabinet and if approved, an announcement would be made for implementation throughout the country. In the 2019 budget, it was stated that owners of cars 1,500cc and below or motorcycles 125cc and below will be eligible for RON 95 petrol subsidy limited to 100 litres per month for the former and 40 litres per month for the latter. The amendment to allow the unilateral conversion of minors in Selangor is now being revised by Sultan Sharafuddin Idris Shah before it is brought up in the State Legislative Assembly. Selangor Menteri Besar Amiruddin Syari said the bill will also be discussed with all parties, including Pakatan Harapan leaders, at the state and national level.
Pada ketika ini, pihak Duli Yang Maha Mulia Sultan juga sedang meneliti kembali pembentangan kertas tersebut dan saya harus merujuk kembali kepada Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku setelah membuat fully consultation dengan all parties and all leaders in Negeri Selangor dan termasuk federal.
The amendment to a state Islamic enactment on the religious conversion of minors seeks to alter the current requirement for both parents' consent to that of either parent. Currently, children under 18 in Selangor must get the consent of both mother and father before converting to Islam. Amiruddin had previously said he wanted to table it in the previous State Assembly seating, but it did not materialize. Previously, DAP Selangor had said they would not support the amendment. The Prime Minister on Monday urged victims of the disaster left behind by the tail end of Typhoon Lakima to be resilient and appreciate the assistance they are receiving from the government. Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad said that even though the assistance might not be much, it nevertheless would help alleviate their burden. The Prime Minister, who is also Langkawi MP, was speaking at a gathering of Padang Matsirat residents in conjunction with the Idul Adha celebration in Kedawang, Langkawi on Monday. Tun Dr. Mahathir said in Malaysia, the people always received relief whenever a disaster struck, no matter how big or small it was.
Orang yang bersyukur dijanji akan menerima kebaikan yang pertama. Ini janji yang terdapat dalam Al-Quran. Bahawa apabila kamu bersyukur, maka kamu akan terima lebih banyak nikmat daripada Allah SWT. Jadi saya harap walaupun bantuan yang kita bagi ini taklah banyak dan mungkin ada yang tak puas hati, tetapi sekurang-kurangnya kita bersyukur.
The tail end of Typhoon Lakima ripped through the northern states of Peninsular Malaysia on Friday, claiming one life, damaging thousands of homes and uprooting hundreds of trees. The Prime Minister also took time to check on the destruction along Pantai Tengah in Langkawi, which was severely affected in the Typhoon Lakima storm disaster on Friday. Although his programs in Langkawi were packed, Tun Dr. Mahathir drove a car himself to see with his own eyes the destruction caused by the storm. Tun Dr. Mahathir was accompanied by his wife, Tun Dr. Siti Hasmah Muhammad Ali. He spent about 15 minutes at the location. Uprooted trees had been cleared away, but damage involving business premises were still visible throughout the area. On Friday, strong winds and a thunderstorm hit the area at about 7:45 p.m., causing damage to business premises, uprooting trees, some of which hit vehicles, and leaving electric cables lying on roads. In Seremban, as the search and rescue SAR operation for missing Irish teen Nora Ann Coirin entered its 9th day, police on Monday beefed up the number of personnel involved to cover more ground. Up to 348 SAR personnel are now involved in the operation to find the girl who went missing from the Dusun resort on August 4th. Members of the media were also invited for the first time to join the SAR operation. However, a recent rainstorm has hampered rescue efforts as the ground is now slippery and muddy. Nora Ann, who is a special needs teenager, mysteriously disappeared from the resort where her family had checked in for a 2-week holiday. Meanwhile, the Quirin family was offering a 50,000 ringgit reward for anyone who might have any direct information on Nora Ann. Her mother, Mabe Josephine Quirin, who spoke to the media for the first time in a closed-door meeting, said this was an effort to help the police with their investigation.
The police have been working extremely hard to bring Nora home. In order to help their investigation, we have decided to offer a reward. 50,000 ringgit has been donated by an anonymous Belfast-based business for any information that directly helps us to find Nora.
Mab, who is clearly distraught and on the brink of tears, pleaded for any information which would help find her daughter. She also asked the public to call the special hotline set up by the police. The Eid al-Adha celebration continued on Monday, with more parties organizing cattle sacrifice ceremonies. In Kota Baru, the Sultan of Kelantan, Sultan Muhammad Kelima, attended an Eid al-Adha cattle sacrifice ceremony at the Sultan Ismail Petra Silver Jubilee Complex. A total of 39 heads of cattle were sacrificed during the event, which was organized by the Kelantan Islamic Religious Council, or MAIK, near Panji. The state ruler arrived at the complex at about 9 a.m., accompanied by the Regent of Kelantan, Dr. Tengku Muhammad Faiz Petra. Also present was MAIK President Tan Sri Tengku Muhammad Rizam Tengku Abdul Aziz. The meat was distributed to 1,500 underprivileged people in the town area and those staying near the state mosque. Meanwhile, Media Prima Berhad distributed sacrifice meat to orphanages and a Tafiz school in Selangor. They are Rumah Amal Budi Bestari, Asnaf Lambayan Kasih Sungai Penchala, and Mahad Tafiz Baitul Ehsan. More than 100 Media Prima staff participated in the program, which saw 6 cattle and 4 goats sacrificed this year. The MPB sacrifice program has been held since 2016. Coming up after the break, robbers blow up bank ATM, escape with 300,000 ringgit. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In Perak, robbers on Monday blasted open 3 auto teller machines, ATMs, in Tanjung Malim. They, however, only managed to escape with 300,000 ringgit taken from one of the machines. Police said in the 6:30 a.m. incident, initial investigations showed that the bank had loaded 300,000 ringgit on Sunday into one of the machines. 2 other ATMs and a cash deposit machine were only damaged in the blast, which also shattered the glass panels of the room where the machines were kept. Police also found traces of chemicals in the parking lot believed to be explosive substances. Also found on scene were 3 drops of blood that are likely due to injury to one of the suspects during the explosion. Final losses are still under investigation. In Selangor, an elderly woman was slashed to death while her grandson was seriously injured after 5 masked men armed with machetes broke into their home in Kampung Tebuk Pulai, Sabak Bernam early on Monday. In the 4 a.m. incident, the grandson had become aware of the suspect's presence outside the house, but before he could alert his grandmother, they had already broken into their home and attacked the elderly woman. The grandson quickly hid under a bed, but when he tried to escape later, he was slashed and suffered serious injuries on several parts of his body. All the suspects then fled in a grey Toyota Vios, in which the vehicle's registration number could not be identified. Upon inspection, it was found that no cash or jewelry were stolen. Police are investigating the motive of the incident and are now looking for the suspects. Still in Selangor, a trailer driver was killed while his assistant was seriously injured after their vehicle crashed at the New Klang Valley Expressway (NKVE) in Shah Alam Monday morning. The accident involved a Scania-type trailer which skidded on its own. The body has since been sent to the Shah Alam hospital for post-mortem, while the injured victim is receiving treatment at the same hospital. A probe is being conducted under the Road Transport Act 1987. In Johor, 2 people were killed while another was injured in an early morning blaze at a double-story shophouse in Taman Bukit Indah, Johor Bahru. In the 4:30 a.m. incident on Monday, police identified the dead as 2 females, one in her 20s and another in her 70s. The injured, meanwhile, was a 6-year-old boy who was rescued by members of the public and rushed to the Columbia Asia Hospital. The remains of the 2 women have been handed over to the police for further action, while the cause of the fire and estimated losses are being investigated. The premises, which housed a hardware store on the ground floor and living quarters on the first floor, was home to 5 people, including a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s, who were rescued from the inferno by firefighters. Residents in the northern parts of Sarawak are expected to suffer choking haze in the coming days if there is no rain to douse the forest and peat fires in Kuala Baram. The haze in Miri continued to worsen, with the Industrial Training Institute station recording an air pollutant index reading of 396. The poor air quality in Miri has been attributed to the forest and peat fires, which saw over 600 hectares of land go up in smoke. Miri Fire and Rescue Department Chief Lau Po Kiong said 20 firemen and 10 personnel from the emergency response team from Naim Holdings Sdn Bhd were dispatched to the scene to perform a direct attack to stop the fire from spreading further. Still to come on Nightline, death toll from Indian floods reaches 184 as hundreds of thousands are evacuated. Do stay with us. On to the foreign front. Hong Kong International Airport has cancelled all departing and arriving flights on Monday as thousands of anti-government protesters occupy the arrivals hall and cause disruption at the major travel hub. In a statement, officials blamed seriously disrupted operations for the cancellations. It also warned that traffic to the airport was very congested and the facility's car parks were completely full. Thus, members of the public are advised to not come to the airport. The protest was the 10th consecutive weekend that protesters have taken to the streets in a movement that began over opposition to a bill allowing extradition to mainland China. Over in India, the death toll from floods in Karnataka, Kerala and Maharashtra has risen to at least 184 as rescue teams race to evacuate people under water's submerged parts of the World Heritage Site. According to authorities, the southern state of Kerala, a tourist haven known for its beaches, hill resorts and backwaters, have been the worst hit region for the 2nd consecutive year, forcing the closure of the Kochi International Airport for 3 days last week. At least 76 people have died in the state, 58 missing, and another 32 have received injuries. Around 288,000 people across the state's worst affected districts, including Wayanad, Malappuram and Kozhikode, have also been moved to relief camps. Last year, Kerala was hit by its worst floods in almost a century, with around 450 people killed. While the monsoon rains are crucial to replenishing water supplies in drought-stricken India, they kill hundreds of people across the country every year. A 35-year-old Malaysian bus driver was detained by Singaporean authorities at the Woodlands checkpoint after chirping gives away a smuggling attempt of more than 800 birds into the Republic on Saturday. This marks the largest seizure of ornamental birds in Singapore in recent years. The 815 smuggled birds were found in 15 containers stored in modified compartments above the bus's rear tires. They comprise of 5 species. Unfortunately, only around 600 of the 815 smuggled birds survived and are currently being cared for and quarantined at National Parks Board NParks facilities. The bus driver, who did not possess a valid health certificate and import permits for the birds, have been referred to NParks for investigation. Any animal imported into Singapore without a permit is an offence under the Animals and Birds Act, which carries a maximum penalty of $10,000 or imprisonment of up to 1 year or both upon conviction. That sports item wraps up Nightline this time around.